The woman who waited 20 years. The desert had a cruel way of keeping secrets. It swallowed footprints before noon, buried bones before sunset, and erased promises faster than the wind could carry them. Men rode into it full of hope and pride, believing they could conquer its vast emptiness. Some returned older and wiser. Many never returned at all. 20 years ago, on a bright morning washed in gold, Amina stood outside her small wooden house at the edge of the Wild West desert. She was young then, with soft hands and hopeful eyes. Her husband, Karim, sat tall on his horse, adjusting the rifle across his shoulder and smiling as though the world belonged to him. "I'll be back before winter," he said. He leaned down, kissed her forehead, then kissed the tiny hands of their two children, little Yusuf, barely 5, and baby Maryam, still wrapped in cloth. "Bring me something pretty," Amina had teased. He laughed. "I'll bring you enough gold to build a palace." Then he turned his horse toward the open desert and rode away. Amina watched until he became a shadow, then a speck, then nothing at all. Winter came. But Karim did not. The first year of waiting. At first, she believed there must be a reason. Perhaps his horse had gone lame. Perhaps a storm trapped him in the hills. Perhaps he found work in a mining town and was earning extra money. Every evening she stood by the road, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders, staring at the horizon. "Is Baba coming?" Yusuf asked every night. "Yes," she answered. "Soon." She made fresh bread each day in case he returned hungry. She kept his blanket folded neatly on the bed. She polished his old boots and placed them by the door. The neighbors still asked kindly. "Any word?" "Not yet," she would say with a smile. Inside, fear had already begun to grow. When hope became heavy, months turned into a year. Then another. The neighbors stopped asking. Some pitied her. Some whispered, "He must be dead. No man stays away this long unless he wants to." Poor woman. Amina learned to walk past gossip with her head high, though every word struck like a stone. Money disappeared quickly. The little savings Karim left behind were soon gone. The horse had to be sold. Then jewelry. Then furniture. Still, she refused to leave the house. "This is where he will return," she told herself. But hunger does not care about promises. So Amina began to work. She washed clothes for wealthier families. She mended shirts and trousers by candlelight until her eyes burned. She baked bread before sunrise and sold it in town. She carried water from a distant well with buckets so heavy they bruised her shoulders purple. At night, when the children slept, she cried quietly where no one could hear. Raising children in dust. The years moved like slow wagons. Yusuf grew tall and serious. Maryam became quick and clever, with her mother's stubborn spirit. Later, another child born shortly after Karim's departure, little Hassan, grew knowing his father only through stories. "What was he like?" Hassan once asked. Amina paused. "He was brave," she said. "Was he strong?" "Yes." "Then why didn't he come back?" That question cut deeper than any blade. She could not answer. Instead, she kissed his hair and said, "Some roads are harder than others." The children saw her struggles. They noticed when she skipped meals. They noticed the patched dress she wore year after year. They noticed how tired her hands looked. When Yusuf turned 12, he began taking jobs in town hauling wood and cleaning stables. "You're a child," Amina protested. "I'm the man of the house," he replied quietly. Her heart broke and swelled with pride at the same time. The winter of hunger. The hardest year came when the rains failed. Crops withered. Wells shrank. Prices doubled. Work vanished. The cupboard stood nearly empty for weeks. One freezing night, Maryam woke to the sound of coughing. She found Amina sitting near the cold stove, pale and shaking. "Mother, are you sick?" "No, child. You haven't eaten." Amina smiled weakly. Mothers don't need much. But Maryam knew the truth. The next morning, without telling anyone, she walked into town and sold the silver earrings Karim had given Amina on their wedding day. With the money she bought flour, beans, and medicine. When she returned, Amina stared at the empty space where the earrings should have been. "You sold them." Maryam nodded nervously. "They were all we had." Amina pulled her daughter close and wept. Not for the earrings, but because her children were learning sacrifice too young. Storm over Red Canyon. One summer afternoon, the sky turned black. Old men in town looked up and muttered warnings. Everyone rushed indoors. A sandstorm rolled across the land like a living monster. Amina barred the door and gathered the children close. The wind struck with terrifying force. Walls groaned. Windows shattered. Sand poured through cracks like water. The roof trembled above them. Hassan screamed. Yusuf braced himself against the door with all his strength. Maryam covered the cooking fire before sparks spread. Amina wrapped her arms around them all. "Stay low. Cover your mouths." The storm raged for hours. When morning came, silence felt strange. They opened the door. Half the town was buried in dunes. Fences gone, roofs torn away, wagons overturned. Their own house leaned crookedly, one wall cracked, but still standing. Neighbors wandered like ghosts through the wreckage. Amina looked at the ruin, then at her children. We rebuild, she said. And they did. The boy who became a man. At 16, Yusuf left for the mines 2 towns away. I can earn more there, he told Amina. It's dangerous. So is hunger. He kissed her hands before leaving. I'll come back, mother. Those words struck her strangely. She smiled, but fear twisted inside her. Would history repeat itself? Months later he returned, thinner but carrying wages and supplies. Then he left again. Then returned again. Unlike his father, Yusuf always came back. The town began respecting Amina's family. They were no longer objects of pity but examples of endurance. She raised them alone, people said. With nothing. Look how strong they became. Amina heard these words with quiet gratitude. Still, some nights she sat outside and stared westward, where the desert glowed beneath moonlight. Some habits never die. The stranger on the horizon. 20 years after Kareem's departure, the day was hot and windless. Amina, now lined with age but unbroken, was hanging laundry when Mariam pointed toward the road. Mother, someone is coming. Far away, a rider moved slowly through the heat haze. Not with confidence. With exhaustion. The horse stumbled every few steps. The rider swayed like a man already half dead. Yusuf, now broad-shouldered and grown, stepped outside cautiously. Stay back. The stranger came closer, then slid from the saddle and collapsed in the dust. They ran to him. His beard was white with sand. Clothes torn. Skin burned dark by years beneath the sun. Amina knelt beside him. Something about the line of his jaw, the scar near his brow. Her breath stopped. She brushed dirt from his face with trembling fingers. Kareem. A house full of silence. They carried him inside. The children, no longer children, watched in stunned silence. This man was a ghost made flesh. He slept for nearly a day. When he finally woke, his eyes moved slowly around the room. Amina. Her name broke from cracked lips like prayer. She stood in the doorway, arms folded. You remember it. Tears filled his eyes. I remembered every day. Yusuf spoke sharply. Where were you every day? Kareem looked at the grown son he barely recognized. I was trying to come home. The story of the lost man. In fragments over many nights, Kareem told his story. He had joined a gold expedition deep into the western Badlands. Bandits attacked their camp. Many died. Kareem was wounded and taken prisoner by outlaws who used captives as labor. Years passed in camps and escapes and recaptures. Then sickness. Then war between rival gangs. Then wandering. Whenever he earned money, he tried to travel east. Whenever he neared civilization, trouble dragged him back. It sounded impossible. It also sounded true. His scars told enough of the story. I should have died many times, he whispered. Only one thought kept me alive. What thought? Amina asked coldly. Home. Amina's battle. Forgiveness is harder than survival. Amina had endured storms, hunger, loneliness, labor, childbirth, ridicule, and fear. But now she faced something she did not know how to fight. Part of her wanted to scream. Where were you when Hassan had fever? Where were you when Mariam sold my earrings? Where were you when Yusuf became a man too soon? Where were you when I buried my youth alone? Another part of her saw the broken old man before her and knew life had punished him too. At night she lay awake listening to his weak coughs from the next room. The past and present wrestled inside her. The children decide. Yusuf distrusted him. A father is more than blood, he said. He was absent. Mariam felt pity. He came back. Many never do. Hassan, now grown, remained silent longest. Finally he said, I don't know him enough to hate him. Those words hung in the room. Kareem lowered his head. He had returned expecting joy. Instead he found strangers carrying his name. The fire outside. One evening Amina sat outside beside a small fire. The desert night stretched endless around her. Kareem approached slowly and sat a short distance away. For a long time neither spoke. Finally he said, You owe me nothing. She stared into the flames. That is true. I know I cannot give back the years. No, I know another man might have done better. Yes. He nodded painfully. Then why let me stay? Amina turned toward him. Because this house was built on promises broken and burdens carried. I decide who enters it now. He bowed his head. And because, she added softly, my children deserve to know truth, not ghosts. A different kind of family. Kareem never became what he once was. He was too old, too damaged, too late. But he worked where he could, repairing fences, telling stories, teaching Hassan to carve wood, helping Miriam's children laugh. Yusuf took longest to soften. One day while repairing the roof, Karim slipped. Yusuf caught him before he fell. Neither spoke. But something changed. Months later Yusuf handed him a hammer and said, "Hold this straight." For the first time in 20 years, father and son worked side by side. The woman who never broke. People in town often said, Karim came home at last. But that was not the real story. The real story was Amina. She was the one who stayed when life became cruel. The one who fed children with empty hands. The one who rebuilt after storms. The one who turned shame into dignity. The one who carried hope until hope became strength. Karim returned to a home. Amina created one. The last sunset. Years later, when her hair was silver and her hands still strong, Amina stood once more at the edge of the porch. The same place where she had watched a rider disappear 20 years before. Now the desert glowed gently beneath sunset. Karim stood beside her, leaning on a cane. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She nodded. "I know. Do you forgive me?" She looked over the land that had taken so much and given so much. "I forgave you long ago," she said. But forgiveness did not mean forgetting. A tear slid down his weathered cheek. She placed her hand over his. "We were both lost," she said. "I just found my way sooner." Together they watched the sun sink below the dunes. The desert kept many secrets. But it could never bury the strength of a woman who refused to be defeated.